Israeli occupation forces surround the Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, demanding immediate evacuation. Lebanon's military says Israel continues violating ceasefire deal despite UN patrols. And Germany and France's foreign ministers meet Syria's military operations chief, Ahmed al-Shara, on behalf of the European Union. Hello, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock Cairo local time, and you're now watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Israeli occupation forces have surrounded the Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, demanding the immediate evacuation of everyone inside. Gunfire has been reported around the hospital, where hundreds of vulnerable civilians, including children, women, patients and medical staff, remain trapped. Meanwhile, medical sources revealed that the hospital's oxygen and electricity stations have been destroyed, leaving the facility unable to provide critical medical services. At least 40 people, including children, were killed in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes overnight and into Friday morning. Local sources have reported that 3 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a home in El Zawaidah in central Gaza. In another attack, 4 people were killed and several others were wounded when an airstrike hit a home and tent in Deir el-Balah. Additionally, 1 person was killed in a strike on a house near Abdul Al Junction west of Gaza City, and another died in an airstrike on the Abu al-Ajin area east of Deir el-Balah. Five people were killed and others were injured in an Israeli attack near the entrance of Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital. Witnesses have reported chaotic aftermath of the strike, with rubble strewn on the ground outside the hospital and victims of the attack being lifted onto stretchers. Israeli occupation forces have arrested 2 Palestinian citizens and seized a vehicle during a raid earlier today in the city of Nablus in the northern occupied West Bank. Local and security sources said that the occupation forces stormed the old city and surrounding areas, detaining Rashad Halewa and Montasser al-Jabi after raiding their homes. The soldiers reportedly caused extensive property damage during the searches and also seized a vehicle from the El Aqaba neighborhood. Israeli occupation forces have continued their aggression against several hospitals in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian news agency reported that Israeli forces set fire to several shelters and homes near to the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza and bulldozed its wall. They also shelled Al-Auda hospital in Jabalia camp, while fires broke out around Al-Auda, Kamal Adwan and Indonesian hospitals due to ongoing shelling and fires set by the forces. The Palestinian Prisoners Society, PPS, has expressed concerns over the safety of Dr. Hussam Abu Safaya, the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital, who was detained by Israeli forces during a raid on December 27th. In a statement, the PPS stressed that Dr. Abu Safaya's case is one of thousands of cases involving Gaza detainees who are subjected to the crime of enforced disappearance. It reiterated its call for the international human rights system to salvage any remaining credibility in its role amid the ongoing genocide. An emergency session today to address the escalating situation in the Middle East, with a particular focus on the Palestinian issue. This meeting, requested by Algeria, comes as the country assumes the presidency of the Council for January 2024. The session will focus on Israeli attacks targeting healthcare facilities in Gaza, including the recent assault on Al-Shahid Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. The International Organization for Migration, IOM, has expressed concern about the impact of winter rains and freezing temperatures on displaced Palestinians in Gaza. IOM Director General Amy Pope said that at least 7 infants had died from hypothermia, highlighting the urgent need for shelter and assistance to reach the people of Gaza immediately. According to OCHA, heavy rains and flooding have overwhelmed displacement sites and makeshift shelters, leaving families exposed to harsh conditions and struggling to repair damaged tents after months of use.
During China's president,
who is 2 months pregnant and experienced.
Hundreds of Palestinian children.
UN experts have called for an end to the blatant disregard of the right to health in the Gaza Strip, following last week's raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital and the arbitrary arrest and detention of its director. In a statement, UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Health, Tilang Mufakeng, and UN Special Rapporteur for Palestine, Francesca Albanese, said that Israel's blatant assault on the right to health in Gaza and the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory is reaching new depths of impunity. They urged Israeli authorities to respect and protect the right to life and the right to health in Gaza and throughout the occupied Palestinian territory. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has stated that despite challenging conditions, UNRWA teams are running all UN shelters, providing life-saving support to people in need. Israel will ban UNRWA operations starting in late January. Approximately 30,000 UNRWA staff assist millions of Palestinians in refugee circumstances with humanitarian services. The Tunisian parliament has called on national parliaments and international bodies to intensify efforts to halt Israeli crimes against Gaza's civilians. The Tunisian parliament condemned Israel's ongoing genocidal actions in Gaza and urged global parliaments to intensify efforts to end the bloodshed. It also expressed deep concern over the inhumane conditions faced by Palestinians as the Israeli occupation continues its deadly campaign, resulting in thousands of casualties. Gazans have expressed a wish for peace in the new year for the entire world. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which persisted throughout 2024, has left the Gaza Strip in the grip of an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. Gazan residents have expressed exhaustion from the relentless cycle of destruction and death, clinging to the hope that the new year will bring lasting peace not only to Gaza but to the world. Now for more on this, we cross over to the newsroom with Mona.
And for further analysis on the situation in Gaza, we're joined from Cairo by managing editor of Al Ahram, Mohammed Izzuddin. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews. And let me start here by asking you about the new resurgence of new heavy operations in Gaza, the reasons for that, and what could be the humanitarian implications of those military operations.
There is a genocide, a systematic genocide against the Palestinian people in the north of Gaza Strip to implement the general's plan, which is the displacement of the people and cutting the humanitarian aid from the north of Gaza totally, in addition to the continuation of the bombardment on the south of Gaza as usual, and the latest toll of the number of people who martyred in Gaza is close to 46,000 people killed, in addition to 109,000 injured and tens of thousands who are not known their fate. The latest Israeli bombardment to one of the refugee camps has resulted in the martyrdom of 70 of the Palestinians, and it included women and children, of course. In addition to the continuation of the aggression to the medical facilities, especially the large hospitals, as well as arresting their directors and burning the respiratory devices and the medical devices, so as these hospitals cannot anymore provide any medical care to the injured people, who are truly many. There are continued Israeli attacks and a systematic plan that is racing against time, so as to harm as much as possible before the new American administration comes to office, and then also to achieve as much as possible on the ground out of the aggression on the Palestinian lands. This also goes along with the operations that are made more than 445 days of continued aggression since October 7, when the Palestinian resistance made an attack on some of the Israeli settlements. So it is not a reaction by Israel, but it is actually, as the Israeli Prime Minister said, he is aiming to change the Middle East. And we can see that apparent in the attacks on the Lebanese territories and occupying new areas of the Golan Heights. And thus, after the failure of the displacement plan and pushing the Palestinians to the Egyptian borders and the Jordanian borders, now Netanyahu and the radical extremist Israeli administration is launching more attacks to force the Palestinians to the south in order to empty the north of Gaza Strip, in order to make a change on the ground and to hinder any kind of attempts for releasing of whomever is still alive of the Israeli hostages. Despite all the international pressures, yet the international silence to the massacres by Israel and the ignoring the UN resolutions by Netanyahu.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Mohammed Izzuddin. That's exactly what I wanted to ask you about, because we're now seeing a UN Security Council meeting. So how effective have been all the UN interventions in addressing the ongoing conflict in Gaza so far?
So, there's, of course, a recognition of the international effort and the international humanitarian and rescue organizations, and also the effort of many governments, on top of which Egypt, in order to secure peace in the region and stop the brutal attacks on the Palestinians. So this UN meeting is aimed to stop the aggressions and to pave the way for starting negotiations for a true truce.
Actually, Mr. Izzeddin, I was asking about how the UN intervention so far has been able to address the humanitarian and aspect, and definitely the whole crisis at large.
If we speak about the situation, all the international efforts have failed, with the stubbornness of the Israeli side and the extremist government led by Netanyahu, as well as the double standards being used by the American administration. Thus, the outcome on the ground is almost zero. There is more aggression by Israel on daily basis, but even every hour. Every hour there is a new attack, and there is a continued war that is not stopped at all by the international resolutions because of not making some real international resolutions because of the American veto and the intervention of the US administration. This is encouraging Israel for more incursions, more taking land, more bloodshed, and more attacking and ignoring the international resolutions and the UN resolutions. The outcome is not up to what's hoped for. And there is more focus now on stopping the killing of Palestinians on daily basis and displacing hundreds of thousands of them under the climate and weather situation now and the cold that is hitting them.
Yes, thank you. That was the managing editor at Al Ahram, Mohammed Izzeddin. Thank you so much for your insights and your analysis. Now back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mona. Thank you. Now, sirens have echoed in Tel Aviv and occupied Jerusalem early this morning as a missile launched from Yemen was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force. The alarms went off around 4:30 a.m. local time in central Israel and occupied Jerusalem. Minutes later, the Israeli military informed the public that the sirens had been activated due to the possibility of falling shrapnel from the interception.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
So to Lebanon now, and Lebanon's military has said that Israel continues to violate the ceasefire agreement despite UN patrols. According to the national news agency, Israeli bulldozers demolished homes in several neighborhoods of Naqoura, delaying the army's entry. The Lebanese army stated that it continues patrolling the road connecting Bayada and Naqoura in the south, alongside the UN interim force in Lebanon, that's UNIFIL of course, and it's also placed barricades on a coastal road between Hamra and Naqoura to prevent unauthorized movement. UNIFIL's headquarters is located in Naqoura. The Israeli occupation military has announced an attack on Hezbollah's rocket launch platforms in southern Lebanon. The occupation military stated that fighter jets destroyed medium-range rocket launch platforms used by Hezbollah at a military compound, as well as another site in the Nabatea region, where additional rocket launch platforms were also targeted. So So now the latest in Syria, and Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and her French counterpart have met Syria's military operations chief Ahmed al-Shara on behalf of the European Union. Baerbock and France's Jean-Noël Barrot are the first EU ministers to visit Syria since the armed forces seized control of Damascus on December 8th, forcing President Bashar al-Assad to flee and ending his family's decades-long rule. Before leaving, Baerbock said the trip was meant to send a clear signal to the Syrian people that a new political beginning between Europe, Germany and Syria was possible. Israeli airstrikes have targeted the Safira area south of Aleppo in Syria, causing a series of massive explosions. Media reports indicate that the strikes targeted defense factories and research centers in the region, although no casualties have been reported. The Israeli targets in Syria included military airports, weapons and ammunition warehouses, as well as aircraft squadrons, radars and military communication stations. Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama and Somalia have assumed responsibilities as non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. Their two-year term officially began on January 1st. The 5 countries replaced Ecuador, Japan, Malta, Mozambique and Switzerland. The 15-member Security Council consists of 5 permanent members, Britain, France, China, Russia and the United States, and 10 non-permanent members elected for 2-year terms by the UN General Assembly. 5 non-permanent members are replaced each year. Now, South Korea and South Korea's presidential guards and military troops have prevented authorities from arresting impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. CIO officials investigating potential insurrection charges related to Yoon's martial law declaration arrived at the presidential compound at 7 a.m. and entered on foot. Inside, they were outnumbered by the Presidential Security Service and their personnel and military troops. Meanwhile, South Koreans themselves have expressed mixed feelings after the suspended arrest of President Yoon Suk-yeol. Yoon is under criminal investigation for insurrection over his December 3rd martial law bid that stunned South Korea and led to the first arrest warrant to be issued for a sitting president. South Korea's Constitutional Court said it will hold first arguments on January 14th in a trial to decide whether to oust Yoon, in which he is required to appear for the first arguments. Well, that's almost all we have time for. Let's recap the main headlines. Israeli occupation forces surround the Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, demanding immediate evacuation. Lebanon's military says Israel continues violating ceasefire deal despite UN patrols. And Germany and France's foreign ministers meet Syria's military operations chief Ahmed al-Shara on behalf of the European Union. Well, that's all for now, but if you would like to keep following Q News, please do on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Q News EGY. Thanks for watching and stay here with us on Q News for more.